Hi there, welcome back. Christy and Alonso and Alicia, we're here with some movies you can watch in your home right now, and you should, starting with Alonso's pick, which was hard to find until recently.
It was, yeah, that's part of why I'm excited to tell people about it. So Barbie Schroeder directed Barfly, which is I think one of the best screen adaptations of the work of Charles Bukowski. There have been several films, but this is one that he did for Canon Films back in the day, starring Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. It is, and it's been next to impossible to find in the US anyway on DVD, so it is now on Amazon Prime and you should totally see it. This is probably, I think, the last great performance from Faye Dunaway, maybe, although, you know, she's still alive, so there's always hope. And certainly the best thing that Mickey Rourke did in this early phase of his career. The Wrestler would come about a decade or two later. This is, I think, when he still looked like his original
Yeah, he
face.
still looked like him. I know, I just saw this really recently. I'd never seen Barfly before, but I'd always been a huge fan of Bukowski's work because it was impossible to find. I don't even know if it made it to Australia, but seeing downtown LA in that time, I thought that was really interesting. And to see Mickey Rourke back in his prime. I also watched Fade Out recently, which was Mickey Rourke's first film. He also looked very pretty back then.
I know, people forget, like in Diner and Body Heat, he looked amazing.
9.5 weeks.
Yes, totally.
Kind of hunky with the dessert toppings.
Some interesting stories about Barfly. Roger Ebert, in his book about the Cannes Film Festival, talks about interviewing Barbie Schroeder and how Golan and Globus, who ran Cannes Films, were notoriously cheap. And they kept pushing back the start date for this film, and they kept threatening they were going to pull out of it. And finally, Barbie Schroeder injected his pinky with Novocaine and went into their office with like a little mini buzzsaw and said he was going to cut his finger off if they didn't let him start shooting the film. And he was going to come back every day and cut off another finger until they did. And he called their bluff and he started shooting the film.
Oh my gosh.
And then also in Bukowski's book, Hollywood, which is basically about the making of Barfly, but with all the names changed, he talks about meeting with different filmmakers who wanted to do his stuff. And he describes what it was clearly a meeting with Dennis Hopper and Sean Penn that went so badly that Bukowski at the end said, I want to put in my will that if I die, Dennis Hopper doesn't get to shoot any of my work.
And I just visited, just yesterday, the grave of Bukowski, which is in San Pedro. It's a tiny little headstone, but I love what it says. His quote is, don't try.
Don't try?
Don't try.
Wow. Well, I saw Barfly at Ebert Fest like 5 years ago, and it really gets alcoholism right.
Yes.
That's kind of like
you
live to drink, you live to find your next drink, and that's your entire raison d'etre. So it's darkly funny, but really bleak.
Yes.
Alicia, what is your choice for us this week?
Well, my choice is my personal favorite film by Jean-Pierre Melville. There's a whole block of his films right now on Filmstruck, and I chose Le Samurai from 1967. This is the kind of film that if you haven't seen it already, then once you watch it, you realize just how influential it has been on so many films. It stars the great Alain Delon as Jeff Costello, who's this very zen-like hitman who's very ritualistic with his work. He's very meticulous, he's very careful, sort of referring to the samurai in the title, that he has that kind of mentality about him. And I mean, he is cooler than cool, and this has a lot of things that you see in Melville movies, like a man living by a code. You've got the fedoras, you've got the trench coats with the popped collars. And Melville, I think, is a really interesting director because he was hugely influential on the French New Wave, but he himself was influenced by American gangster films. So I love to see a movie where you can draw lines through cinema history from gangster films to Melville, who even changed his last name to reflect his favorite American author, to the French New Wave, and then to New Hollywood with people like Martin Scorsese. And then even beyond that, something like Drive or Baby Driver is very influenced by this.
John Woo, also a big Melville fan.
Exactly, yeah. So it's well worth watching if you haven't seen it before.
I love also the coolness of it. Like, it's so simple, and yet like the fashionability of it, like the style of it just pops off the screen in like really simple ways.
Jazz music, there's not much dialogue, it's very minimalistic, and it still, it looks so cool, it holds up.
Yes, go see that. See Le Cercle Rouge, go get your Melville on. Yes, my choice is a little more contemporary, but he's sort of a classic figure too. It is Itzhak. It's a documentary about the great violinist Itzhak Perlman. It's a really lovely look at him and his home and his family, and the fact that he makes this all look so effortless. Like, he's the absolute best at what he does, and he makes it look like breathing or walking down the street. And we see, as you see from this archival footage here, he just had this gift, from day one, and that is how he's become famous. And we go back to like the violin makers in Tel Aviv that he's known for many, many decades. And again, you think someone who is that accomplished and that revered might have an ego on him, and he just seems like the loveliest, sweetest man. He and his wife have this hilarious banter with each other, just like snappy banter, just making fun of each other while they're making dinner for the family. There's a wonderful scene where Alan Alda comes over and just sits down, and they open a bottle of wine, and they just sit at the kitchen table and they just talk.
Oh, wow.
And they each just talk about their own craft, like acting and music, and what creative impulses might be similar between the two or different between the two. And I would watch an entire movie of just like, or a whole series. I want a whole series of people coming over to Itzhak Perlman's kitchen and having a bottle of wine and just talking about what they do and why they love to do it.
I mean, it seems quite inspiring from what I've seen of the trailer. It seems very moving movie and the kind of film about people following their passions, which I always love.
I looked up the director, Alison Chernick. This is her feature debut, but she has made documentary shorts about, among others, Roy Lichtenstein, Rick Rubin, Roy Choi, Francis Coppola, Almodovar, Steve McQueen, Julian Schnabel, Matthew Barney. Oh no, sorry, I take it back. The Matthew Barney one was also a feature. So, but yeah, she clearly knows how to talk to artists and get them to sort of open up about their methodology and their craft and whatnot.
Right, yeah, you would think that talking about how you make music would seem to be such an ephemeral thing that you can't really put into words, and he does. So this is really, really great. What else is new on Filmstruck that we should check out?
Well, there's so many great films on there at the moment. One section that I love is the Bogart section because it has so many of his movies from the early days. There's a film called Black Legion, which is really interesting, where he stars as a factory worker who's a good guy, but then he ends up joining a white vigilante group, and it's scarily timely in talking about the way that the media that he was consuming had turned his opinions and against immigrants, and he started to join this group. So it is fascinating in a film that I hadn't seen before till Filmstruck.
Okay, I was gonna say, so with a lot of these, like, have you seen them already, or are you going back, or how does it work with that?
Yeah, it's a mixture. I mean, there's some that I return to time and time again, but often the great thing that I like about Filmstruck is the curated theme. So there are many within the theme that I've never seen. So I've often seen the hits of the directors, like the biggest ones that I needed to see or wanted to watch, but being able to go and explore the deeper filmography is always really gratifying, and you end up finding little gems that you love.
It's kind of cool to see like how things fit into someone's film. Like, how did they evolve?
And because you end up learning about world history, politics. I mean, so much is tied to each film that it's great, like learning lesson for you as well. Filmmaking.
Yeah, and they get very specific about topics like colonization or the media, or like and again, it's like there's always going to be a couple that I've seen, and then like, oh, I don't know that one. What is that? You know, and so I'm continually astounded at what gets dug up on Filmstruck and what sort of gets a platform, and just films that I think people didn't know about, but that do fit in either over the course of somebody's career or in a theme that's being discussed.
Yeah, one of the great things about film is there's always more to learn, always more to see.
I want to pick your brain. We have 30 seconds. Okay, you came from Australia several years ago.
Yes.
And because you always love movies. Yes. What is like the classic movie that was the light bulb for you as a kid growing up?
His Girl Friday.
Okay.
Oh, good one.
Makes total sense.
The smart reporter. I was like, yes, I want to be her.
How old were you when you saw it?
I think I was about 6 or 7. I was quite young, and it's just burned into my brain of seeing that film and feeling a world open up to me.
Bad those eyes at me. Oh, Walter.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you for being here. You're amazing. We can find you in a million places. She's at Alicia Malone on Twitter. And we'll be back on Wednesday with more news and stuff. Thanks, bye.